Good morning, everyone. How are we doing today? We're good? Is the balcony good? Thumbs up from the balcony. There we go, good, balcony's good. Good to be with you here today. Thank you, Sandra, for that table. All will be revealed later on. A warm welcome if you've not been here before, or if you've been here before. We just want to really welcome you in. It's great to see you, and it's great to have you here this morning. I'm going to be continuing our Joseph series just as we go on, just over the next kind of while, as I share through this. But really what I'm going to be giving is like an overview of Joseph's life and an overview of the things which he had to get through to accomplish what dreams God had placed in his heart. But we all go through difficult times, don't we? We've all been through struggles, and if you've not been through struggles, I can almost guarantee you probably will go through struggles. I really like watching Ben Fogle, New Lives in the Wild. Is there anyone else? Okay, I know I'm beyond my age. It's like usually retired people would watch Channel 5 programs, but I enjoy it. So, and obviously no one else here is willing to admit that they like watching that program, but I know you do. I know you do, really. But after watching that, I always turn to Sophie and I'm like, oh, maybe we should go New Life in the Wild, like off-grid, just living off the land, getting energy from the sun and, having no money worries and stuff. But obviously in the next breath, it's like, so what do you want to watch on Netflix? Or let's put the kettle on. Like, the reality of it is probably not going to be able to go New Life in the Wild. Well, it's definitely not, actually. But often when you watch that, what you find is that the people who are doing that, living in the wild and going off-grid and all that, they're usually running from something. They're usually running from some sort of struggle they've not faced, or they're usually running from something... Oh dear, it's not going to fall on top of me, that is it? Usually they're running from something. But we all know we can't run from trouble. We can't hide from trouble. And if we hide from struggles and difficulties, sometimes the thing we're hiding in then becomes our struggle or difficulty. We're all going to go through these things. And God can give us grace to go through struggles. He can help us through these things. 2 Corinthians 12, verse 9 to 10 says, "But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore I will boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may rest upon me. For the sake of Christ then, I am content with weaknesses." Wow, imagine being content with your weakness. "Insults, hardships, persecutions and calamities, for when I am weak, then I am strong." God gives us grace for struggles, gives us grace for our weaknesses. And Joseph had his fair share of struggles and had his fair share of difficulties that he faced. Our root verse here is found in Genesis 49, verse 20. And that's what we're kind of basing this next kind of series and the current series on. And it's found in Genesis 49. So let's just read Genesis 49, 15 to 21. Let's all take out our Bibles. Said no one sitting in the congregation. Why not start taking your Bible to church? It's a challenge. If you've got children, how amazing would it be if they started seeing you walking about with your Bible? I think there's significance in that, I do. So let's go to Genesis 49, verse 15 to 21, and let's read this. "When Joseph's brothers saw their father was dead, they said, 'What if Joseph holds a grudge against us and pays us back for the wrongs we did to him?' So they sent word to Joseph saying, 'Your father left these instructions before he died. This is what you are to say to Joseph. I ask you to forgive your brothers the sins and the wrongs they committed in treating you so badly. Now, please forgive the sins of the servants of God, of your father.' When their message came to him, Joseph wept. His brothers then came and threw themselves down before him. 'We are your slaves,' they said." And there's real significance in that verse, as we'll find out in a moment. But Joseph said to them, "Don't be afraid. Am I in the place of God?" And this is that root verse. "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for the good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. So then, don't be afraid. I will provide for you and your children." And he reassured them and spoke kindly to them. So, just over the next while, we're going to be looking at the harm that Joseph went through and how God demonstrated his grace in that and how he demonstrated it through it. Demonstrated his grace through it. I'm sure many of us know the story of Joseph. If you don't, there's a famous musical, and we're now going to sing a song from it. So, ready? I've actually forgotten the song myself. I close my eyes. Yes, there we go. In the last service, everyone just stared at me like this. I was like, okay, dokes, let's move on to the next point. So thank you. I think it was Benaiah who had my back then. Thank you so much. Musical night of Benaiah. They must be going through the musical just now. But Joseph was the favourite of 12 sons. He was fathered by Jacob, and he had 2 dreams that one day his brothers would bow down to him. And we have just read that dream coming true later on in the story. So Genesis 37 says this. He said to them, this is Joseph, listen to this dream I had. We were binding sheaves of grain out in the field when suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright, while your sheaves gathered round mine and bowed down to it. His brothers bowed down to him. Then he had another dream, and he told it to his brothers. Listen, he said, I had another dream, and this time the sun and moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me. Now you can imagine, Joseph is like a young guy. He's just been given this like ornate robe from his dad. Like I made this graphic, and this is how I imagine his ornate robe. It probably wasn't a technical dream coat. I think that's a little bit of poetic license there, taken by whoever it was that did that, but it was an ornate robe which was given to Joseph. So you can imagine he's standing in this like ornate robe, and he's telling his brothers, one day, in a kind of roundabout way, one day all of you are going to bow down to me. Can you imagine how they would have felt? Definitely didn't land very well at all. But this was a dream that would one day come true. But what Joseph probably didn't realise at that time is that he had to go through trials in order to see the fulfilment of that dream, that many people's lives would be saved. So I have entitled this kind of little talk or preach or whatever you want to call it, Vehicles of Grace. And we're going to look at how God showed his grace in Joseph's trials and how God showed his grace through Joseph's trials. So let's just have a little look at the first thing. So the first thing is the pit. So Joseph's brothers were so jealous and so mad at Joseph that they threw him into a pit. Let's have a look at Genesis 37, and this is what happens in verse 19. This is them saying, here comes that dreamer, they said to each other. Come now, let's kill him and throw him into one of these cisterns and say that a ferocious animal devoured him. Then we'll see what comes of his dreams. When Reuben heard this, which was one of his brothers, he tried to rescue him from their hands. Let's not take his life, he said. Don't shed any blood. Throw him into the cistern here in the wilderness, but don't lay a hand on him. Reuben said this to rescue him from them and take him back to his father. So Joseph came to his brothers, stripped him of his robe, the ornate robe that he was wearing, and they took him and threw him in the cistern. The cistern was empty. There was no water in it. And then from there, people came and they sold Joseph into slavery. But the pit itself was actually a vehicle of grace, because they wanted their brother dead. They were going to kill him, but instead they put him into the cistern alive. And it wasn't actually a pit, it was something called a cistern. So a cistern, back then in that kind of time, we've got a picture of one just here. There it is. A cistern was in like the desert or in the wilderness, and it was a place where they used to collect water for their journey. So like travellers or like people would come past and they would gather water from that for their journey. So you can imagine for people back then, being in the wilderness or a desert or a place, they can imagine the thirst, and you can imagine coming across this and thinking, finally like some water and some refreshment. And I find it sort of, really cool actually, that God foreshadows really what Joseph was going to be, and he was going to be a refreshment. He was going to bring salvation. He was going to be a saviour in a sense to the people of Egypt by saving them from famine one day, a lot like what these cisterns would have been. But you can imagine Joseph was maybe thinking, why? Why would you do this to me? Why would you throw me into this cistern? What have I ever done to you? You see, pain can often lead to purpose, and for Joseph, it was a step towards what God had for him in his future. Joseph probably had to be humbled. When I read these verses, I get a sense of Joseph being maybe a little bit cocky, maybe a little bit proud of his ornate robe, and I'm sure we've all maybe been at, Union Square or something, and we've seen someone kind of walking down in all their fancy clothes and stuff, and you can often think, check them out, thinking and I get an idea that maybe Joseph would have been a little bit like this. But for Joseph to be all that God needed him to be, he needed to be humbled, and Joseph was humbled. His robe was taken from him at this point. Often we can find ourselves in places that only God can lift us out. Maybe you're in here today, maybe you feel stuck, maybe you feel that there's no way out of your situation, maybe you feel enclosed, whether it physically or whether it may be mentally. God can be your rescue and your deliverer. Psalm 107 verse 28 says, "Then they cried to the Lord in their trouble, and he delivered them from their distress." Psalm 18 verse 2, "The Lord is my rock, my fortress, and my deliverer." And some versions say rescuer. "My God is my rock, in whom I take refuge, my shield and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold." God can be your rescuer. Let him be your rescuer. Well, maybe you're stuck in here, trusting God. He has got you covered. See, what was meant to harm, God's used as a vehicle to the next step. It was all a part of the process. His brothers were trying to harm him, but God used it for good, which led him to the next place, the next, what I believe to be the next vehicle of grace, and that was the palace. For the purpose of alliteration, I've called it a palace, but in the Bible it's listed as Potiphar's house. But be with me here, palace. I'm imagining Potiphar's house to be extravagant, to be like a palace in comparison to the pit which Joseph was just pulled out with. Genesis 39 verse 2. "The Lord was with Joseph so that he prospered, and he lived in the house of his Egyptian master. When his master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord gave him success in everything he did, Joseph found favour in his eyes and became his attendant. Potiphar put him in charge of his household, and he entrusted to his care everything he owned." Keep it there. The Lord was with Joseph, and God is with you as well. It's within his nature to be with you. In fact, I would argue that he actually cannot not be with you. There's three kind of theological statements: God's omnipotence, his omniscience, and his omnipresence. Omnipotence meaning he's all-powerful, he's incredible, he's amazing. Omniscience meaning he knows everything. He knows your future, he knows your past, he knows where you're at just now. And his omnipresence meaning he is everywhere at once. Absolutely everywhere, no matter where you go, he's there. And I often sometimes feel like Sophie's got this on me. She is everywhere, at all times, close to me in everything. I'll give you an example. We're doing up a house just now, I've spoken about it before, and it's like 11 o'clock at night, and I'm thinking, I'll maybe sit down for a minute now. Just as I'm away to sit down and put the TV on, Sophie's head pops around the corner. "Have you put bins out? Have you done this? Have you put in that kitchen yet? Have you done that?" And I just think, how did she know? She wasn't here, but now how did she know I was about to sit down at this moment? Or it would be, I'm thinking, right, Sophia's quiet just for a minute. I'll grab my phone and I'll just reply to that message. Or there's that thing I wanted to Google, and I'll grab my phone and I'll be scrolling, and then Sophie's head will pop around the side, like, "Who are you messaging? What are you messaging? What are you doing on there? What's happening? What's that?" And it's like, "No, nothing's happening. I'm just messaging someone about something." It's like you just cannot get away from Sophie. And often I do wonder, she's got this ability of being omnipresent, but when I get in the car and drive away, she can't come with me. There is an escape getting away at those points. She's got this incredible ability of being everywhere at once, close to me all the time. But when I do drive away, she's not there. And I think sometimes we can see God being with us a little bit like physical people being with us. Like Sophie isn't with me just now, but God is. And God is always with us. No matter where you are, whether it's at work, whether it's, I don't know, wherever you may go, God is with you always. He's close to you all the time. He's next to everyone. So no matter where you go, God is with you all the time. He is close. And I was thinking about ways, how can I even describe this and maybe help you understand even more? And I thought, I can't, but I can read Psalm 139, because it explains it in a far better way than what I ever will. So let's just read Psalm 139, 1 to 18. You have searched me, Lord, and you know me. You know when I sit and when I rise. You perceive my thoughts from afar. You discern my going out and my lying down. You are familiar with all my ways. Before a word is on my tongue, you, Lord, know it completely. You hem me in behind and before, and you lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me, too lofty for me to attain. Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go up to the heavens, you are there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. If I rise on wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will guide me, your right hand will hold me fast. If I say, surely the darkness will hide me, and the light will come night around me, even the darkness will not be dark to you. The night will shine like the day, and for the darkness is as light to you. For you created my inmost being, you knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. My frame will not be hidden from you. When I was made in the secret place, when I was woven together in the depths of the earth, your eyes saw my unformed body, and all the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. How precious to me are your thoughts, God. How vast is the sum of them. Were I to count them, they would be outnumbered the grains of sand. When I awake, I am still with you. Wow. God is amazing. Like, He is with us. Like, when I was reading this, I was thinking, see if they taught what I read just now in schools. No young person would have anxiety. No young person would feel lost. No young person would struggle with suicidal thoughts. No child would feel alone, because God is with them. And God is with you as well. He loves you so much. God is with you always. Whether you're in the cistern, whether you've been sold into slavery, you can prosper because God is with you. When I say that, I don't mean financially, and I don't mean with physical things, but I mean spiritually with God. Stick close to God in your trouble and you will experience His favour and grace. But within that palace, Joseph then went on to the next trial. And we see it in Genesis 39. Now Joseph was well built and handsome, but after a while his master's wife took notice of Joseph and said, "Come to bed with me." And me and Sophie went to see Joseph Technicolor Dreamcoat. We went to do it. But then in that play, this is where they get it wrong. They say that Joseph slept with Potiphar's wife. But it's not true. Joseph was a man of integrity, we see here. But he refused. "With me in charge," he told her, "my master does not concern himself with anything in the house. Everything he owns, he has entrusted to my care." But eventually, Potiphar's wife tried day in and day out to try and pursue Joseph. But eventually, she managed to twist the situation in which her husband thought Joseph had essentially raped her. And from that, Joseph was thrown into prison. Can you imagine how Joseph must have felt? He's just lost all his family. He's been betrayed by his brothers, thrown into the cistern. He's then been pulled out, sold into slavery. He's then managed to with God by his side, managed to make good of a situation which was actually meant to harm him. And now he's been thrown into prison. after all of that. You can imagine he must have been feeling, come on, do I not get a break here? But you see, he didn't realise at that moment that it was a step towards his vision and his dream. You see, often I see and think that like God's kingdom is kind of upside down, isn't it? It's not necessarily like I'm going to climb a ladder to be at a certain point, but it's more like the more trials and the more difficulties you go through, the greater the strength that God can give us, and the greater the grace he gives us to step into what he is calling us to do. You see, the further down Joseph got and the harder things got, the closer he got to be where God had given him that dream all those years prior to that. Because God was about to reveal his grace and his goodness through Joseph. To get where he needed to be, he needed to go to the prison, which is my next point. It says in Genesis 39, 20-21, but while Joseph was there in prison, the Lord was with him. He showed him kindness and granted him favour in the eyes of the prison warden. The Lord was with Joseph in the prison once again. Now I've got an illustration here. I thought I'd take a leaf, quite literally, out of Lisa's book. So here I've got a plant, and I bonsai. Again, I thought that would get a laugh, but it doesn't. I won't use that one again. It's a serious thing, bonsai. But I love doing bonsai stuff. I know it's a bit weird, but it's just one of the things I do like. But a lot of you won't know that I had a career doing this kind of thing. I used to work at Williamson's Garden Centre. Anyone remember Williamson's Garden Centre? Yeah, and a lot of you now are saying, that's where I know him from. He used to work at Williamson's Garden Centre. I was the muscle for Williamson's Garden Centre. And I can remember I used to lift I've forgotten what it's called now. Obviously I was very... compost, thank you. I used to... Zed's has heard it once, so he knows what's going on. I used to lift the compost into the cars, and the massive kind of ugly stone dogs, which kind of look like dead dogs, mortalised in time, and I used to lift them into people's cars and stuff, and did the jobs that other people couldn't really do, believe it or not. But another part of my job was something called top dressing. So in garden centres, the plants aren't all new. A lot of those plants are from last year, and what you do is you kind of top dress them. So you take the kind of rubbish top off, tarp them up a bit, and then put them back out for sale for the next kind of season coming round. But a part of that job when you top dress is you'll take a plant out, and a lot of the time the plants were pot bound within that pot, which meant that they'd almost used up all the nutrition within the soil, and it was just a solid, dense thing of roots. So they needed to be replanted into a different pot. Now this tree here, this tree has the potential to be as big as any other tree. There's nothing special about this. This is what you would call a Japanese azalea. It's an azalea, basically, for garden people in here. I'm sure a lot of you would know what that is. It's those bushes you see out in springtime, and they're covered in colourful flowers. This is one of them. And it has the potential within it to be as big as any one of those trees that you've ever seen. But the reason why it is the way it is because it's within this little pot just here, and that's what makes it a bonsai tree. So if I was to lift this out, which I won't because I've got lots of nice little roots on top here, it would just be a solid mass of roots. There's literally hardly any soil left within this tree. It's used up its nutrition that's available to it within this pot. So to be able for this to grow, I have to give it artificial nutrition. And I think that's the same in a lot of our own lives, whether it's, us as Christians, or maybe if you're not in here, people who, I think everyone in society is a little bit like that. We get to the point where maybe we've outgrown a certain situation, or maybe we've outgrown ourselves a bit, that we actually start to give us artificial nutrition, like going to Union Square or the shops every weekend to buy clothes to make us feel a little bit better about ourselves, or scrolling through social media to compare ourselves on other people and be like, well, actually, it's a little bit nicer. Or maybe it's changing your car every 3 years because you've got it on PCP and you want to try and keep up with everyone else with getting a new model that's coming out. It's artificial nutrition. It doesn't help and it doesn't give you sustenance. But this tree here needs that in order to grow. And I believe that as Joseph as well. He was planted in these places and outgrew them. But if I was to take this tree and just shove it in James Ramsey Park, for example, this would probably die quite quickly because its root structure isn't ready for such a great expanse and great place. With this tree, for me to get it to be in that place where it's able to, say, go into James Ramsey Park, I would have to take it, plant it in a bit of a bigger pot, let it grow a bit, plant it in another pot, in a bigger pot, and a bigger pot, until it's ready to go into the place of a bigger, expansive place so it can fulfill its full potential. And I think that of Joseph. I think if God took Joseph with his ornate robe at the point where he had this dream and planted him in Pharaoh's courtyard, he probably would have got beheaded, I would think. But God had to, through the harm that came through other people's situation, through the work of other people trying to harm Joseph, God was able to take him from one place, his root structure grow. So he took from one place, he then went from the cistern, he then went to the palace, and then he grew and outgrew that, and then went to the prison, and then he outgrew that, and then he was ready to be planted in Pharaoh's house, and was the second in command of all of Egypt. And maybe that's a little bit like you in here just now. Maybe you've outgrown it, or maybe you're growing within a situation. Maybe there's a job you're in just now and you feel like, why am I in this job? Why am I in this? Just trust God. Maybe He's letting your roots grow in order that you can be planted in somewhere else. Now when I say that, I understand a lot of context in churches. It's like get planted in a church. I don't believe that in that context. I believe you should be planted in church and you can grow in church without being moved to anywhere else. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is in other areas of life, it's important that we can be planted. Now, this bonsai tree is in this, and I'm not going to replant it. But there's also power in bearing fruit in whatever season you're in. And take a look at my bonsai just here. So that's my bonsai in springtime. See, no matter what happens, no matter where it's planted and no matter where it is, it can bear fruit. And for us in here, let's bear fruit no matter where we are. Let's trust in God no matter where we are. Let's believe in Him. Let's remember that He is with us no matter where we are. Genesis 49 verse 22 to 24 says this of Joseph. Joseph is a fruitful vine near a spring whose branches climb over the wall. See, Joseph spent 2 years in prison and then had an audience with Pharaoh where his gifting was used once again, and he was able to interpret Pharaoh's dreams. And Pharaoh's dreams were about a famine that was going to hit Egypt soon. Joseph was able to interpret that and was able to put things in place that Egypt would not die in that famine. God was showing His grace through Joseph to the people of Egypt. God's goodness and God's grace. You see, I believe that all people experience the grace of God. Just the fact that I've just done that just now, I believe is an act of God. I believe that if you're in here and if you're alive in here, it's by God's grace and God's goodness. I believe that your neighbour, that the fact that they've got a house, although they may not believe, I believe it's God's grace. I believe it's out of God's goodness that people are able to enjoy life. It's a recognition of God's goodness everywhere. But I don't believe that saved many, many lives physically. Jesus was the Son of God and was separated from His Heavenly Father on that cross. And He died and was beaten and abused. He was rejected. He was spat upon. He was hated. And He died, but for the saving of all lives. Hebrews 10:10 says that Christ died once for all. He took the pain and punishment on himself. He died so that we didn't have to. You see, Joseph had to go through trials which benefited the Egyptians and benefited him eventually, and even his brothers. But Jesus went through trials so that we could get the benefits. He was separated from his Father so that we would never be separated from our Heavenly Father. You know, as a pastor, like, the questions I always get asked are like why questions, like why has this happened? Why has that happened? Why have I lost my family member? And I don't think being a Christian is really about having the whys answered. I know often we do think a lot of why questions, and I think it's okay to ask why. But I think being a Christian is about knowing where. If you've lost a loved one, it's about knowing where maybe that loved one is, not maybe why they've gone. And I think Jesus came to this earth so that we would know where we would go one day as well. You know, I believe that Jesus came to die for us. He took away the power of sin for those who believe in him, the debt of the consequence of sin, which is death and eternal life away from God in a place called hell. Away from him, that's the consequence of sin. But Jesus gave us a way out, and that was believing in him. And it's really simple, actually. It's not as complicated as you think, because in Romans 10:9 it says this: if you declare with your mouth Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, then you will be saved. It's not jump up and down 5 times. You need to do all these like 50 commandments, and you need to, be good living and all these things. Declare with your mouth Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead. You will be saved. Lifestyle and whatever that is, all that stuff can come as we trust and live and do life with God. For it is by grace you have been saved through faith. This is not from yourselves, it is a gift from God. I want to ask you a question, is have you accepted that gift, that saving grace? Have you chosen to follow Jesus? Because common grace, just, believing that God is, I believe in God. I believe that, he's working in this world somehow. That's not enough. You must believe in Jesus. You must believe in the saving grace of Jesus. You must believe that he died on the cross for us. For me and for you, he thought about you when he died on that cross. You must believe in him and believe that by doing that and by accepting him, we are forgiven for all the wrongs that we've done. We're forgiven, and then also believing that he defeated death in raising from the dead. It's an amazing thing. It's incredible. I want to give, maybe there's someone in here, maybe there's not, but maybe there is someone in here who needs to respond to that. Maybe you've never made that decision, and maybe you've never been like, okay, I get it now, I need to believe in Jesus. So maybe I'll just ask us to bow our heads and close our eyes just now. And maybe if you're in here and you're saying, right, today's the day. I need to make this decision now. I don't understand all the whys, but I need to make this decision. And you'll know because you'll feel maybe Jesus knocking on your heart in your seat, and you'll know that now's the time. But Jesus will never force his way in. It's your decision to make. So I'm just going to count down from 3, and if there's anyone in here who's saying, nah, that's me, I need to make this decision now, just stick your hand up. It's just me looking, I'm not going to embarrass. Although we would love to chat to you afterwards, and Ben and Monica and myself, Lisa's through the house. We'd love to chat to you and maybe give you some stuff that can help you understand maybe some of the whys. We'd love to be there for you. But if that's you in here, you're saying, I need to make that decision. And I'm going to count out from 3, and I'll just wait to stick up your hand. Super simple and quick. So if that's you in 3, 2, 1, just throw your hand up quick just now. Is there anyone in here who's saying, you know what, I choose Jesus? I'll leave it a few seconds. That's fine. Maybe you're going through a trial just now, and you're going through a difficulty. I just want you to take this away with you. God is with you. He is with you in every situation. It's within his nature to be with you. So I want to challenge you to try and recognise it and look for the grace that God has got in that situation. We're about to sing a song just now which is all about grace, so let's stand to our feet and we'll worship.
People come together, strangers, neighbors, our blood is one. Children of generations, of every nation, of kingdom come. Don't let your heart be troubled. Hold your head up high, don't fear no evil. Fix your eyes on this one truth: God is madly in love with you. So take courage, hold on, be strong. Remember where our help comes from. Whoa, 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 salvation is in His blood. In Jesus, light of heaven, friend forever, His kingdom come. So don't let your heart be troubled. Hold your head up high, don't fear no evil. Fix your eyes on this one truth: God is madly in love with you. So take courage, hold on, be strong. Remember where our help comes from. Whoa, whoa, oh, 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 everything with breath, repeat the sound. All His children, clean hands, pure hearts, good grace, good God. His name is Jesus. And swing wide, all you heavens, let the praise go up as the walls come down. All creation, everything with breath, repeat the sound. All His children, clean hands, pure hearts, good grace, good God. His name is Jesus. And swing wide, all you heavens, salvation is in His blood. And Jesus, light of heaven, friends forever, His kingdom come.